we're doing this again, Mihir.
Oh, fuck. We just said this once before, but yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
fuck
so
again.
yeah, so you're with Mihira and the Nesius, and we are officially calling ourselves the Three Princes of Serendib. Interesting story, but we'll leave that for another day.
No, you figure it out, no? Yeah. You, everyone else who's listening to this should figure it out.
I vote for everyone figuring it out as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we give them a clue?
No.
Okay.
That's God is there, no? Ask Google.
Sure. Yeah. So I think Duel had an interesting topic to start.
Yes, we have an interesting day.
All of you are
planned
ready
you.
for this? I am not.
Yes. So
FYI to everyone, there'll be interesting questions and
It's a problem solving.
pointless answers. Okay.
It's a problem solving situation. Like we figured this out about half an hour before coming.
Oh, okay, brilliant.
right. So here we go. Here we are firing the question towards you, which is we have a client meeting tomorrow for a client who has requested us to build strategy for marketing their product.
No, they actually haven't requested anything.
We understood that they need strategy here, and thus we are putting it forward. The question that I have for you is, this is a really high value client. So, and it's also a lot of work. It's also one of those very rare situations where we are given a budget and told spend it in the best way possible for the company. Right? Now,
Whoever this client is, bad my idea. Okay, go for it.
This meeting tomorrow, what should we be doing? Where do we start? What is step number one? Here are the limitations, right? It is a brand new market. We have next to no intelligence over there. And we understand our products over here. It has been selling to a demographic in this country, but those demographics don't seem to be reflecting outside of the country. And these are our restrictions. We are supposed to be spending...
They have been selling to a demographic in the country?
Yes, in this country, in Sri Lanka.
So they've been a big player in the industry here.
Don't be cryptic. Tell me what you want.
No, so that's what I'm trying to articulate the point a little bit clearer, right? So they've been a big player in the industry here, and they
want to go abroad.
They have a seasoned product, and they are abroad in a few places, but this is a completely new country for them.
Where they're going to?
Where they're going to is a completely new country for them.
Is it a new product for that market?
We don't have the intelligence.
First thing.
Oh, it's a software as a service. We should probably mention that all the way.
It's a software as a service.
Yes. Okay. And the market that we're trying to enter is Indonesia. This is what they have asked us to go for.
First question is, you should ask them is, what do you want to do? What do you want out of us?
Revenue. They want revenue.
No, wait. No. Revenue you get to revenue sometime, like you get to revenue last. That's an output, right?
Right.
Okay. What do you want them, like what do they want you to do specifically?
Basically, they said, here's a budget. Do it.
Do what?
We need to enter Indonesia, and
you can't tell me what the category is. You can't tell me what the software is.
We can tell you a bit of information, I guess. Where do we draw the line, though?
Yeah, that's
Okay, fine. Let's not get that.
It's identifying if we let you know exactly what the USPs of the product are, because I don't fully think that there is a lot of softwares in the world that actually are like that. So within that service vertical, I feel like they are the only software who has
functionality wise, what I can tell you from what I know about the
so basically they have a very good proprietary software in Sri Lanka and they want to market it.
They have two very good proprietary softwares.
Okay, so we'll pick one.
Yeah.
Okay. First thing is first. Ask them what they want. I mean, like that's the fundamental question. And don't say no. Yeah. So don't get them to ask questions. They don't get them to answer questions like they want to enter the market. They want to make revenue. Those are all. These are objectives or things that you want to do.
Okay. But there's a higher order of thinking that leads them to go to this place.
Yeah. So ask them, get them to frame the questions correctly. I think that's one of the best ways to. If you have especially if you have clients who are not exactly sure about how to achieve something. They might be brilliant. By the way, this is not uncommon.
Yeah.
The most brilliant marketers still don't know the right questions to ask an agency.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's normal. So assume that is normal. The best way to start for me is, I think you should get them to articulate that problem very clearly. Frame their problem exactly the way they want to.
Right.
Okay. Like for example, if I take it on logical process, I will say, get them to ask. So you want to enter X market.
Right.
Why do you want to enter X market?
Okay.
Okay. Have you thought of any other market? That's a sub question. Why do you want to enter that market? What do you have to give to that market? So go down the list of questions and like get like talk to them.
The general WH questions, right?
What, where, when, how, whatever.
Yeah.
I would ask you to go deeper. I mean, like, say,
depending on the answers, there are always follow-up questions. But
yeah, basically, no. So don't get framed. That's another, I think, big mistake a lot of people make. Thinking essentially has to be on what we call first principle, but like we should always strive to not to think in a frame.
Right. Okay.
At least when you're formulating the questions.
Sure.
Or the problem.
Sure. And if you naturally come to a frame afterwards, it's a different story. But
yeah, you can model it. So okay, let's break it down gradually. First thing, ask enough questions of them or get them to ask the right question so that they ask the right question of you.
Right. Okay.
Or they present you the right problem to solve.
Can you work backwards there?
Yeah.
So
again, it's non-sequential. Do not think it non-linear.
Right.
Yeah. Don't think of it in a very beginning, middle, and end is a format or a frame. We have told stories like that. That's why we have a beginning, middle, and end. That follows a sequential progression of time. Right? But beginning, middle, and end doesn't apply to thinking.
Sure.
You can think at the end, go back to the beginning, return back to the end. So, especially when you're formulating, especially when you're going to a client to ask what you want, don't have a frame. Don't write down. Don't have a list of questions to ask. No. Have a list of questions to ask. By all means, have a list of questions to ask. But do not have those list of questions built inside a framework.
Okay.
We are asking this question to answer this block.
It's a mind map more than
correct.
Yeah.
Think of it like
and
a mind
form.
map. Okay. But the thing is this. This doesn't apply. It depends on the kind of personality you are. It doesn't apply to everyone. If you are, so you guys are generally very open in trait, right? Like you're open-minded people. You can look at a large set of data and like distill a quality question, a quality problem out of your client. That doesn't apply in every case. It doesn't apply in every case.
Okay.
So
yeah, because I'm a very systematic thinker.
And do it the way you want. Well, it has to be on. But essentially, don't have frameworks to when you're at least formulating the problem.
Sure. Okay.
So tomorrow
it gets you closer to the problem.
Yeah. Tomorrow go and ask them simple point of view. What do you want? Why do you want us to do it? Okay. It's very important that you ask why you want it done as well, right? And if they give you very shallow answers like we want more revenue,
right?
Dig. Figure out what is it that, okay, by more revenue, what do you mean? Are you looking for, because there is not enough geographic expansion in Sri Lanka, you're going to Indonesia? Yeah, do you think it's a...
Actually, I can answer that question quite easily because I believe they are not the only company who have been asked to do this, right? So this is an initiative by our Export Development Board.
Yeah.
In which they are speaking to a couple of larger
software
developers out there, and they're asking them to increase the exports that the country is creating by funding efforts to enter into that Indonesian market. This is a
one of
current
those last
trend out there.
efforts kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So fine. So I'm talking for about this because I don't know the problem. I don't know where you are going with it and all that. At the highest level, be very clear about what the problem that you need to solve. That start there.
Sure.
Don't have preconceived notions about it. Don't have a bloody ego about it. Even if you have an ego about it, let it go. If you think software has to be developed in or software has to be sold in this specific way, fuck it. Don't listen to your head. It might be the way. It might be the case.
Right.
But at the beginning, don't listen to it. So let go of.
Arrive there as a solution of the problem, not as a preconceived assumption.
Correct. Exactly. Be as clear and concise about the problem that you need to solve. If you are as clear and concise about the problem, and by the way, people will get really pissed
when you're going through this process.
When you're going through this process because they think, fuck, you should know. Otherwise, why the hell am I hiring you?
Yeah.
That's fine. Let them get pissed. Trust me, they are not going to fire you. It's your first meeting. They will fire you 2 meetings down the line if you keep on asking the same question. But do not worry about them screwing, like firing you. Make sure that you have a decent amount of time. Don't do it in 10 minutes. Don't go for a 10-minute briefing. Get 1.5 hours to 2 hours of time. Okay. Or 1 hour of time if the executive is really, really tight for time. But essentially, almost all the time, sit down with them. Make sure that you go through iterations and iterations and iterations of questions that you have. When you leave that meeting, you must make sure that you have enough material around you to formulate a good enough problem or a good enough set of questions to ask.
The goal of the meeting tomorrow is to make sure that we understand the problem and nothing else.
Nothing else. Don't do anything else.
Okay.
If it pisses them off, don't worry. You will go again next time. See, people generally get fired when they don't deliver.
Yeah.
Not when they ask questions. It just irritates people when you ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't worry about getting fired. This is to anyone who wants to do this. Do not be afraid of asking questions and getting to the bottom of what the person you are trying to service needs.
Right.
Okay. Get to the very bottom of it, and then that sets a nice bed for you to now construct.
Just as an example, what would you consider when we're walking out of that? What kind of answer should we be, or question should we be walking out of that?
No, you should have enough material to. So these meetings generally end up with, like your client will know far more clearly what they want as well.
Okay.
And they will most likely thank you for it as well.
So our role there then sort of is to be a facilitator to help them articulate their own position.
Exactly. If they can't, and if you can't do that in the process of doing it, by the way, prep for this. So you know the problem. Write the questions down.
Sure.
There is no harm in having a guide.
Sure.
But make sure that, because you can't go back to them again. You can't call them and ask because it's not professional.
Yeah.
Write the questions and make sure that you stick to the questions, but like be genuinely interested in figuring it out. So if the question tapers off into another subset of questions, that's fine.
Follow it.
Like go and look for it. Go down the rabbit hole if you have to. Don't waste time doing it.
Yeah.
When you know it's going to it's going to its fruition, quickly cut and move to the next question, kind of thing. But essentially, no prejudice, no belief sets, absolute honest attempt to understand their problem and therefore articulate their problem better for them.
Okay.
Because if they articulate their problem very well for you, your solution will be richer for it.
Definitely. Yeah, sure.
So you're building on far richer ground than
so
just
garbage
like
in garbage.
Exactly. So you're building. So garbage in garbage is a famous term that is used for briefing. If you put bad briefs in, you get bad briefs out. But I'm saying even before the briefing, this is, you guys are going for an initial face to face, right?
Basically, an exploration session.
This is like
Discovery,
This is discovery, right?
Yeah.
Then you will have rich ground to start working on your problem. Then start working on a problem.
And the problem in essence over here is the insight that we should be working on solving through whatever mediums that we are planning to.
I think it's
create
just
and
an
deploy.
insight gathering exercise.
No, it's not insights, guys.
It's not insights
there
over here
yet.
as well. Okay.
No, it's not insights.
Yeah.
Fuck insights. Drop this dumb idea of insights. Insights are not dumb, but like drop it. Like forget about that. It's not insight. You're basically asking them, what the fuck do you want? And you want to know the depth of it.
Okay.
You don't know what the fuck they want. Yeah, I want revenue. No, that's a poor answer.
Everyone wants revenue.
Everyone wants revenue. Everyone wants profit. But understand the real, what moves them, what jigs them, what pushes them to go abroad. Like figure those shit out. And if by the end of that session you get, this is what I want done out of this entire exercise, and they will be happier for it because they have articulated very well for you. You will be happier for it because
Our job
you
is
have,
clear.
your job is not done. Your job,
But it's clear.
It's clearer.
Yeah.
It's far more well articulated, and you have a lot of other material that you can build on. You know their personalities. You know what they want as an end output. So
You know what the
you have
deliverables
a
will be.
far greater view about it. So approach it like that.
Sure.
There is no harm. There is no harm articulating, getting people to articulate problems. There's no harm. It's good for the person that you're articulating it for, getting them to articulate it for, and it's good for you as the person who's receiving it to ensure that there is clarity to respond to it.
Okay. Sure. There's a
Yeah, Shan is here. So we just got a friend coming over.
friend joined us. He's in a sarong and a Abercrombie and Fitch t-shirt.
Can I make this an interlude to get some beer?
Let's do that. So very interesting, right? Because we were trying to get the whole strategy session out of this 2 hour meeting. But clearly defining the problem, obviously, now that he mentions it, it as articulately as possible is much more important.
Knowing is half the battle is.
G.I. Joe.
Yes.
G.I. Joe.
Well, I guess the next question would be, I'm sure the first question was directed towards serving us, really, in figuring out what we are going to be doing tomorrow. But if anyone else is doing this, like if you are a small to medium business and you are trying to enter a foreign market, as someone who has experience entering multiple foreign markets, what
Actually, I have not entered into a new foreign market. No, I haven't.
what about bringing brand new brands here?
Yeah. Many times. Many times.
Is there any sort of what would be okay? You know what? Let's frame this in a slightly different way. Tomorrow's meeting from the other side. What should the marketing people be coming prepared to ask us? What if I was an SMB and I had just called an agency in for a briefing? What should I have prepared to explain to them? And
Their problem.
We already understand the
My
problem.
assumption was that they don't know their problem. If they know their problem, then you're okay. Then start working on trying to solve it.
So now if I'm the marketing person, I already understand the problem that I need. What should I communicate to the agency in order to get the best possible results?
Wait, first of all, how do you know that you understand the problem that you have?
Oh yeah, you know what? That's a great place to start.
So I'll take you through how we approach briefs. So briefs. So see, general advertising. If you're talking about we are talking about marketing out here, right? I'm not talking about business. I'm talking about specific marketing, right? It essentially follows the same pattern and the rules. Generally, briefs were always been so. There's a brief from a client to an agency.
Okay.
There's a generally in a traditional advertising agency setup. There's a brief from the agency to the creative. Okay. The rule about these are my rules about how to brief an agency. You must not write a creative brief. if you can write a creative brief, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there are great stories about how creative briefs were written. Like, for example, I'll give you one like creative briefs were given. If I take you one example of it, there was this famous, I think it was Maruti or some car example, where the client just sent one car for like 7 people or 6 people or something like that, and they got into the car and they drove to the office and they got down and said, "Was that spacious?" "Yeah, that's a brief."
I certainly hope they don't do that to us.
So there are stories. There are stories like that. So there are many stories.
And also, on behalf of all agencies, please don't do that to the agencies.
See, a client's brief to an agency must be as clear and concise, truthful as possible, very clearly articulating what you want.
Okay.
As clearly as possible.
Okay.
Okay. Saying, I have this belief set, I have this insight. Therefore, I want this messaging to be delivered.
Okay.
Okay.
And it will be on these platforms.
It has to be on these platforms. These are the guidelines, and you should be very clear about what the guideline. Agents, most agencies who have long-standing brands don't need the
Platforms,
etc.
Yeah.
Because they already know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it has to be as concise, as clear, and as truthful as possible.
Sure.
Say, this is my problem. I need this fundamental problem solved. Right? Then you have the agency guys writing briefs, which are generally very creative and fun and interesting, and it articulates exactly what you want to pull out of the creative. We call it a platform. So a client's agency to a client's agent's brief to the agency would be a very clear document that says this is exactly what I want. What the guy in the middle in a traditional agency would do is they elevate it to say what sparks off my creative.
Okay.
So they set a platform for the creative to jump off.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the general process. Building a brief. That's what you're asking. How to build a brief. This is from a client to
an agency, okay. Which is what a lot of people I would feel would be running into, where there is a lot of conflicting information on the internet, right? It's not really experience that's talking. It's just pretty
client
much.
Client to an agency is very simple. It's not very simple. It has to be given thought. See, if you give it thought, they will, maybe in bad language, but they will articulate it the best they can.
Sure.
Okay. If you want me to tell you, like, there are hundreds of formats of this, right?
I mean, I'm sure it's not really the format. I'm not really after the format, to be honest. I'm after the. Is there a systematic
What is the
approach?
business problem?
Yeah,
okay.
basically.
What is the business problem?
Right.
What are you suffering from right now?
Right.
What is breaking down and what is growing? Or articulate the business problem very clearly. Okay. If you know which audience that problem is coming out of, tell what the audience is.
Okay.
And it's not, you don't have to describe this is Amala who is so and so who has 8, 15,
So
26.
no persona.
It's not. You can do the persona thing, but you must understand that all personas are the same. Generally, why an audience?
What? All personas are the same?
No, not all personas. Say, like, for example, if you're working in FMCG, all FMCGs generally end up selling to a married woman who has kids.
So, okay, yeah, fair enough.
I mean, as crude as I can get, right?
Yeah.
But why generally? This is again my point of view. I haven't read this anywhere, but my point of view, why there are very clearly defined audience sets, right? So, okay, there are two audience sets. There's a media audience set and there is a creative audience set. Creative audience sets are defined very fine. You're talking to a 30 to 35-year-old woman who is currently married, who has 2 kids, who is
Whose normal days like
like
this,
this,
she
like
likes
that,
to
do whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Generally, why you give the creative audiences set is for creative consistency.
Oh, right. Okay.
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 Right.
So
You are still
so the
communicating
guy
with this very
so
specific person.
if you have 5 people writing the creative audience set, like 5 individuals, like multiple brand managers writing the creative audience set, one thing that will most likely never change. The business problems will change, the insights will change,
But who you're
we
talking to stays the same.
who you generally talk to remains roughly the same.
Yeah.
A brand's bullseye audience, as we call it, is generally almost all the time the same. Hold on. Okay, so it will remain essentially the same. So my belief is why there is a creative audience set is generally for purpose of consistency more than anything else. Then you have the second set of audience set, which is the media audience set, which is broad. Go to as many people as possible is generally the rule of thumb.
Okay.
Who are remotely interested in you. It doesn't have to be the 30 to 35-year-old.
Right.
It can be from 18 to 55. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
So media audiences are different. Creative audiences are done for a very different reason.
Yeah, I mean, let's say in a lot of software as a service companies, let's say we are targeting entrepreneurs, right? There is no specific age group, right? And
Yes.
going as broad as possible.
Also on media audiences. So, brief. Articulate the problem articulate your problem as well as you can. Don't hold back. Good advice is don't hold back on the problem.
So even if it's something negative, you have to talk about it. Especially if it's
Absolutely, if it's something negative. Yeah. That's the first thing you should be
Our
doing.
brand causes cancer. What do we do?
negative. Get out of the tobacco industry.
Yeah. So talk about, be as clear as possible. Describe the audience as you want. If you have a view of the message that you want to give, it's a great thing to give the agency a guideline on the messaging that you want done.
Okay.
If you have an insight that you want tapped on, because now brand managers or brand custodians do as like a lot of consumer based work. So they go and visit people quite a lot. If you can articulate a great insight for your communication, at least you give a broad insight that can get them started looking for something, that's great.
Sure.
If you don't have it, it's not necessarily critically bad. What generally happens is BMs end up writing very, like, they end up writing facts as insights and observations as insights, and that becomes a problem. There is I mean, creating an insight is not an easy thing. It's very, very difficult.
What's the difference between a fact and an insight?
How I describe it is, it's the underlying truth. Now, the underlying truth is very hard to see. It requires a quite degree of observation. Now, I've been doing this for the last 15 years. I am not that good at it because I've seen people who are exceptionally good at it.
Right.
I mean, like people who can do like 4, 5, 6 connects and figure out, oh yeah, that is exactly that is a core premise of what I understand this behavior. I understand the underlying behavior that I need to tap.
Okay.
I understand the underlying problem of this set of people.
Sure.
I understand how this specific movement that I'm seeing in the market works. So they understand the underlying premise. So creating an insight is a difficult task. There are various ways of, like, there are in my view there are idiotic ways, like asking why 5 times and all that. Do not ask why 5 times. For fuck's sake, never ask why 5 times, because see, the problem of an insight is you need, when you're looking for underlying behavior, especially, you need to know when to stop.
Yeah.
Because when underlying behavior becomes, you're talking about human truth. Like mothers love babies. Is, I think, a human truth. It's not a bloody insight. Everyone knows it. 1, everyone feels it. 2, and everyone has used it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a, it's no longer a, it's no longer an insight. It's a basic human truth. There is maternal love towards, we know it through science, we know it. Those are not insights. So don't ask this famous, like famously said, ask 5 times and you'll get to an insight. Fuck no, you don't ask 5 times and get to an insight. If that is the case, then every piece of communication that has ever been done would be marvelous and touching your heart and breaking your heart, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
What you need to try and do is, we are digressing to insights, but like, let's digress a little bit. We can talk about it a little bit. But essentially what you're trying to do is, we are trying to understand what is causing something, or if that is causing it, can I do something with it? It doesn't necessarily be what is causing something. Is it doable? Can I move people to do something? And insights can be as shallow as, for example, I'll tell you. When I told this to a senior marketing person when I was a very young brand manager, I said, no, that's not an insight. But I believe it's an insight because it's a workable piece of information.
Okay.
We had a problem with toothbrushes. People were using toothbrushes for a year. Okay. And then we said, like, okay, fine. How do you get people to use brushes more often? And we went and asked them, okay, how often do you change your toothbrush? 3 months. Every 3 months. Okay. Can I see the toothbrush? You take the toothbrush
like
and it's played all over the place. It has been used for what, a year and a half.
Yeah.
Oh, like a long bloody time. It's certainly not 3 months. It's 100% not 3 months.
Unless like Hulk Hogan was invited to brush their teeth for them every morning.
Yeah. So you realize the contradiction between the statement and the reality. Okay. They say every 3 months. Universally, it was told every 3 months.
Right.
And more or less universally, the brushes have been used for much longer than 3 months.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the observation. The insight for me was, okay, people believe that they change their brushes every 3 months.
Yeah.
That an insight. People believe it. They
Sure.
believe
Even
it.
though it doesn't actually happen.
Yeah. They believe it.
Yeah.
My mind, I was asking why the hell that is, because on the back of all our packs for the last so long, and as part of our basic education on oral care, for the longest times in the 1980s, we've had change your brush every 3 months.
And it's subliminally.
It has hit people's psyches very strongly.
Yeah.
So while everyone says it, no one does it.
Sure.
That became a very strong basis for an agency to pick it up and bounce off. Because it's like, okay, people believe they change their toothbrushes. Then wait, if they believe it, yet they don't know it, how can we get them to know they have to change their toothbrush? Because simply going then change your brush. So for example, if the communication had been change your brush every 3 months, they would have said, yeah, I anyway change my brush every 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So the observation is they don't.
Yeah.
So the problem is fairly well articulated there. So the observation and then the deeper insight, like the lower level understanding of the behavior, we understood.
Sure.
I said, people think they change their brushes every 3 months, but they don't.
Sure.
That to me is a fairly decent level insight. While it's shallow, it feels shallow, but it's a decent level.
There's a lot you can do with that.
Now the pull off of that, the jump off of that is very specific. Now the agency has, people think they do. How can I get them to not to think they do? Now the problem is they think they do every 3 months. That's why people don't change. Now how do I get them not to think? So the output of that, and the video is on the YouTube, I think. the output for that was we need to give them another indication of when to change the toothbrush, because going and telling them simply change the toothbrush, they would be like, yeah, we change the toothbrush.
Yeah, because they all think so.
Yeah, so we said, okay, toothbrushes obviously don't have expiry dates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shall we create one for them? So we created an expiry date for them. So toothbrushes don't have expiry dates. When you take this thing off, there's no point at which a toothbrush expires.
Right.
So we said, okay, let's create not an expiry date. This was done by a brilliant creative in Sri Lanka. Soru, shout out to you. I had a brilliant team, Sugi and Soruban, working on this. So the output was expiry date. Let's create an expiry look.
Mm-hmm.
What is the expiry look?
The splayed out look.
No. Turn your toothbrush. If you can see the bristles from the back side,
Nice.
that is an expired brush.
Mm-hmm.
Not look at this, because everyone sees it looking forward,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now so the communication was no. So looking forward, no one has ever changed it. Now I'm giving them a specific action. Turn it. Look it from the back. That becomes a communication. Then they took that core idea, an expired look idea, and they took it to another dimension altogether.
Right.
So we created like toothbrushes as public enemy number one, and we went to town with this one. I think there's a video on it on
Yeah,
TV,
you
and
showed
the
it
ad-
to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the ad is there as well. But essentially, that's how an observation becomes an insight and becomes a communication idea and like a
But
advertising
this
idea.
all comes from the very well articulated brief.
It all comes from, so that's why, so getting to this insight, if a client can give you this insight, great. If a client can't give you this insight, you need to fucking find it yourself.
Sure.
Or like you need to find a way to arrive at it. And finding a cornerstone to build your campaign on is by far, which is an insight to build this thing is, there are two cornerstones in a great piece of communication. There is generally an insight and an idea. Finding these two things.
What's the difference between the two?
The idea is the solution. It's the, it's the output.
Okay, sure. Okay.
The insight is the observation that you are hinging the solution on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It can be shallow, it can be deep, it can be... What it should not be is human truth. It can't be common human truth.
Okay.
There's very little you can bounce off of that. It should not be an observation. It can't... You can't merely make it an observation, because the observation doesn't lend itself to an idea as either.
Let's define observation there. Because to me, what an insight is an observation of a behavioral pattern.
It is an observation. So we are just saying, so there's an observation that there's this behavior happening,
Right.
which is fact, or it's happening right now. We are asking them, okay, what is causing this? Is it being caused in a very contradictory manner?
Okay.
Is it what is being said and what is being told are different? You
What is being
are
done is
looking
different.
for, what's the best word for this? You're
disconnect.
looking for juxtaposition
Right. Okay.
of some sort.
Sure.
That's why this is the problem. There is no prescribed method to get here. It's just a lot of consumer connects and working
Sure,
with consumers
I
and
understand that
understanding
completely.
people to this thing. There's no prescribed method. I can't tell you this is the way you get to an insight, and no, it's just work.
My
and work
question
and
is
work.
more along the lines of, how do you know you have an insight and not just an observation?
You feel great about it. I mean, there's no, to me, I don't. Generally, people go, we've never thought of that. It's behavioral. Some people go, fuck, that's cock. But generally, people, like, you go, that feels good. It's like the
Right.
same feeling that you get when you have a great idea.
Right. Okay.
You're like, fuck, no one has seen this. I see it. Fantastic. That's generally the feeling. But see, like the thing is this, an insight for me, see, in the hierarchy of, like, if you say in the hierarchy, an insight for me may not be an insight for my boss, because my boss might have seen this underlying behavior 100 times and articulated it already, and it's like, yeah, I figured that one out like 10 years ago. Chill, brother. That happens, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's generally, people go, we never thought of it like that, or we didn't see that. And for you, it feels just, it just feels good. It's like coming up with a great idea. That's it.
Okay.
And there's, again, an insight is as good as the output that it generates. To me, in a commercial setting.
Okay. So you take a utilitarian approach to it.
I take a very, I'm a marketer. I have what other approach should I take about it?
Sure.
I am there to make. If I can't make money of that thought, then there's no bloody point of doing it. No.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Or at least, like, okay, fine. At least if I can help somebody with it, that will be great. But as a co-professional, if I can't make money out of it, then there's no point.
Sure.
Right. So what I would ask finally to conclude this is another thing that's going to go on for, I think, a bit of time, which is.
So we articulated what we had to say about our brief.
Yes. Initially.
That's fine. Yeah.
The business. Understand tell the audience if you can, if you have an insight, and tell the messaging to the best of your capability. Be very specific about times, dates, etc., etc., etc. Money, time, dates, how much you want to spend, how much you don't want to spend. Don't generally. I prefer people don't give budgets, but give very restricted time periods. Don't give agencies or creative people 6 months to work on something. You will never get anything out. Don't give them 2 days to work on something. You will get something very shitty out. So give them, understand the person you're talking to, and write. Tell them, depending on the person you're talking to, if you have a relationship with them, give them a time, but give them a very specific time frame.
Sure.
Some people argue that giving a budget is good. Some people argue that giving a budget is bad. It depends on the situation. It's up to the person. So that I leave to. Sure. There are briefs written, I worked again for some brilliant marketers in India, and there are briefs that are written in 3 lines. You say insight. It's basically 2 lines: insight and messaging. Problem, insight, messaging. One article, one word. 1 line to articulate the problem, 1 line to articulate the insight, and 1 line to articulate the messaging. That's it. 1 slide. And by the way, and
it leaves just enough ambiguity for a creative to work
just
around.
proliferate out of it.
Yeah.
I am not a huge fan of doing that, because I think there needs to be a little bit more material for people to work on.
It really depends on the creative you're
It
working
depends on
with,
it depends on who you're briefing. It depends if you're briefing a account executive. I don't think that's the way to go about it. If you're briefing creative, that's a better way of going about it. So there are you have 3 lines. Don't give people briefs that are 10 pages long. No one reads them anyway.
Sure.
Unless you get a highly conscientious person who likes to read things. That's essentially the crux of if you want to do a good briefing to an agency. Yeah.
Cool. What was the question you had?
Not particularly entering markets. What about the differences in different markets? So if I am a company that has already established myself in one market and now I am proceeding to another, what should I be looking out for? Should I assume that the audience that I have here is at least to some extent similar? Is there any information I can take from where I am?
No, man. That's a very complex question to unpack.
Right. Okay.
All markets are different. All markets have to be different. No? Humans are not the same.
But
wouldn't the underlying human values, I think the world is essentially the same. Like a mother's love for a child doesn't change anywhere in the world. It doesn't. Realistically, it doesn't. People's attraction to a cute baby does not change anywhere in the world.
Because it's at a biological level at that point, right?
It's at the biological, social construct levels.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily be even at the social construct level. It's generally more or less the same.
Okay.
We are civil towards other people. We don't want to hurt them.
The social contract, yeah.
Yeah, the social contracts are essentially the same in this part, like in this time and age, across the markets. But culturally, but behaviorally, culturally, societies and countries change so significantly. So significantly. Like the difference between India and Sri Lanka is vast in behavioral terms. The difference between states in India are vast.
Right.
Socially.
Regionally, yeah.
Regionally.
Provincially,
State-wise.
yeah.
The differences within the state are vast. India is, of course, like,
But
it's
see-
not one country. But so as a result of it, you have
This doesn't really tie up with what you were saying earlier, which is that who you are selling to, the persona very rarely changes. The person itself doesn't really change. So how does that tie in here?
the underlying cultural. So that's the thing. The context. Okay, fine. I am selling a beauty product to somebody in India, somebody in Sri Lanka, and somebody in Bangladesh, and somebody in Pakistan. The beauty product makes the person look more beautiful and feel better about themselves. Yeah. That doesn't change. Everyone in the world would want that, right?
Yeah.
How they want it and why they want it for will be very different.
Right.
Okay.
What they will go through to get it will be very different. Whether they are willing to spend money on it, like spend $10 on it or spend 5 rupees on it, will differ. The output, the cultural output of it.
Right.
will
Okay.
differ
So
drastically.
the human truth is the same because it's a human truth, but the behavioral patterns around the truth are different.
Very different. And it's
So you do start off with something, which is that knowing that this problem exists even in these other markets. It's just that why that problem
So
exists
marketing-
and what to do about it is different.
multinationals have built empires based on that belief. No, so human truths are common. There are insights that transcend borders as well, right?
And these are archetypal behaviors in general, though.
And companies like Procter have made it their masterclass in taking one set of insights or belief sets and proliferating it out into the world. They're masters at it. Some companies go the complete opposite direction. They countries like businesses like Nestle, because they operate with food. No, food is very specific to regions and palates are very different. And all that. So everything is developed for them in a country. No, not everything, but most things are developed for them in a country. That's why you get Maggi Daya for Sri Lanka. You don't get Maggi Daya in India.
And why I personally believe that Milo in Sri Lanka is the best Milo there is.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, it's a bit too watery or there's something different about
Or
it.
it's
too
sweet,
sugary,
or
Yeah.
Some things that's right.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So that depends on what your business approach is.
Sure. Okay. And essentially a lot on what sort of product you're selling.
Yeah. Like software doesn't have to get.
If the solution is to boost productivity.
But why someone would want productivity would be different from over there than it would be over here. Or it
Oh,
would be
no,
different
not
between different
culturally,
people.
but like
The difference there is, or at least what I think the difference there is, why people are unproductive is what you have to look for.
Yeah, that would make... That
Not
would
why
give you
someone
the...
would want productivity.
very good point.
Yeah.
Why people are unproductive? The behaviors that constitute lack of productivity differ vastly across countries.
Exactly.
Like, for example, a Japanese worker on Friday who has worked 15 hours a day for the last 4 days would not be the most productive person on Friday.
I'd argue that they'd still be more productive than most of us. But yeah.
Maybe not much. That's the thing. You
Who knows?
don't
Who
know.
knows?
You don't know. That's the thing. So that behavior is very different from place to place. Yeah.
That's quite the episode.
And okay, so if we're cutting the episode short, then there's always the question of what Mihira has to ask from us.
Oh, okay. So you're meeting a client tomorrow.
Yeah.
What do you want to achieve for them?
Well, that depends on what they want to achieve.
What do you...
For tomorrow's
At a high
meeting, it is to understand.
No, not tomorrow's meeting.
Okay.
Not what they want at a very high level.
Generate value, if you ask me. But it's a very generic term, I guess, to say that that's what I would like to do.
So basically,
What
I
do you-
I want them to achieve the business goals that they want.
Okay. So that too, that's an attitude question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what attitude do you go into, like for especially for young people starting out businesses or solution provision. These things. Go in with the attitude that you are looking for great value. You're trying to inject value into that system. Make sure that they achieve and essentially they end up happy.
Yeah.
Of what they want to do, essentially. So that's the attitude question. It was a shallow question, but it was asked for a specific reason.
I mean, if we are going down that route, but how I would answer it is, I want them to make more money, because the more money they make, the more money I would make.
Sure.
And by showing value, that is how I justify just
Oh,
how
you
much-
just added like a layer
Yeah.
of fluff on top
on top of
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
I
sure.
guess. So there you go. There's the honesty over there.
Done. So
And
that's it.
so let's just right before we cut it off,
Yeah.
I'll cut off that middle bit over here, just that little bit. Let's recap everything that we spoke from the beginning.
Seriously?
Yeah, just a small recap.
Oh, you want me to do it?
Yeah.
Ah. I will have to listen to this podcast again to recap it.
So we spoke about briefs. We spoke about
We
insights.
spoke about how to approach a client. In
How
the
to
first
approach
meeting.
a first client in the first meeting.
Then we talk about how
to brief an agency.
How to brief an agency.
Then how a marketing team should prepare to brief an agency.
Maybe, yeah. And how a agency should be prepared to go and to ask the right information.
Right questions.
Spoke about insights and how
Needs
insights
assessment
work.
is- that's it.
And we spoke about how cultures are different to each other, and each culture has its
What
own
you can
quirks.
carry forward from what you already know and what you can't, basically.
You must try
Yeah.
and understand that. Okay, that's enough. No, that's good.
Put that in organically. So
I like it.
Done.
Alright, done.
all right. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
are signing off for today. We'll
Do that
see
again.
you
Do that
again.
again. Do that again.
Right. So we're signing off for today. We'll see you again next Thursday on the Three Princes